In this video, you will learn to discuss the terms identification and AAA in the context of cybersecurity. You'll also learn how to discuss the three types of authentication and the use of controls.
Identification and AAA. Identification. What is identification? It's when we first present ourselves against a resource. This could be by a username and password. This could be by a token. Let's use authenticating against a social network as an example. Once we present ourselves with the username and password, the application or the resource is going to authenticate us against its resources. So it's going to make sure that we actually exist under that environment. From there, it's going to authorize us, or it's going to give us the proper rights in order to access that information. If we're using the social network example, we should be getting a user type of role associated with us. We shouldn't be able to use any admin type of rights. From there, we're going to be able to have accountability to the things that we do. We spoke about this on an earlier chapter, so we're going to have the accountability of the things that we do with that ID or that authenticated ID. We're going to explain a little bit better how this works. In order to use a resource, we first need to identify to get the proper rights and the authorization in order to use that resource. When we use that resource, we're going to actually get some accountability of our actions. So everything that we do is going to keep a log of things. Then we're going to talk about authentication methods. There are many methods out there. This can be summarized on three. First thing is something that you know. What is something that I know? Could be a username and a password. Then something that I have. Usually this is being broadly used with banking, trying to upscale the security. They usually give us a token or a smart card. Then that's something that you are. What are we? What can we provide? This usually falls with biometric controls. In this case, we're going to use fingerprints as an example. Something that you have. As you can see, this is something that we use on daily lives. We have a credit card with that chip. The chip is something that we have, and we actually authenticate with it. In some countries, for example, in the US, when you use a credit card, you need to put a PIN. That is something that I know. And then something that I have, I actually confirm that with the chip that I have. Also, the RCA token, when I authenticate against a banking site, I know that they gave me a user and password. But the RCA token would actually create a random number or token in order to confirm that it's me that I'm logging to that resource. So something that you have is going to be something physical. It could be an app on your phone, it could be another piece of hardware, but it's something that you're going to actually have with you. Something that you are. What are we? What can we provide to a server or to an authenticating method? There are many things out there, things all the way from brainwaves, frequencies, but the most commonly used are fingerprints. Fingerprints, retina scanners, and biometric signatures, which could fall into anything really. What's the basic flow of this? It's going to start with the biometric capture. Then we're going to translate that image or that sample from the biometric capture into bits and bytes that actually the computer can understand and create an algorithm and find that pattern, unique pattern against us. It's going to take that and compare it against the one that it has on its database, and it's going to give us a match. Usually there is a range of error. In this case, for the biometric capture for fingerprints, we have a 90% chance of actually being accurate for it. There's a 5% error. Controls. We're going to speak regarding controls that we have or that we use on our daily basis. This has been summarized on three: administrative, technical, and physical. Administrative controls could be any policy or procedure that we have in our enterprise. It could be such a thing as a spam policy. For example, that many enterprises, if you receive an spam email, you must report it as spam. That is something that we can use to prevent that malware coming into our system. When administrative controls or when the user behavior is in place, we can also add a layer of security with technical controls. With what could be a technical control, in this case, it could be a firewall. Not only we have a policy control that when a spam email comes into our work email, we need to report it. But in case somebody actually opens that information, we have a firewall. Also, we have our physical controls. Our physical controls could be anything that at this point, it could be a separate room with having different biometric controls in order to get in. It could be a wall, it could be a door, anything that actually physically restrains us from reaching that resource. So we spoke regarding the control types that we have, and we're going to speak a little bit of the subcategories that we also have on those. We have our corrective controls, which actually corrects the problem after discovering it. What can it be a corrective control? Could be a policy, trainings, any kind of penalty for breaking those procedures that we have in our enterprise. Preventive are things that actually help us to prevent or to uncover violations of internal controls. What could it be something that is preventive? Internal audits, random internal audits. Dissuasive, we are trying to, or with this term, we're trying to encourage violators. This could be a camera on a server room in order to prevent that type of odd behavior on the servers. Maybe a person would stop or would think twice regarding doing something outside the policy or the company's policy because his movements are being recorded. We also have our recovery controls with different things that will actually recover us in case of a disaster. On here, we could mention backups. Then we have our detective controls, which actually help us identify possible violations. On here, we can add our firewalls. Then compensatory on here, if we were able to identify a gap and then it wasn't enough to cover it with a policy, which is an administrative control, we got a compensatory control, which could be a firewall, just in case that somebody actually clicks that spam email in order to prevent that from coming into the enterprise. We're gonna have a compensatory control that will actually block any type of malware by adding that module into our firewall. On here, I'm gonna share a little bit of a chart which actually goes a little bit more in depth into the control and type of controls. Also have the type of control, the preventive, detective, corrective, dissuasive, and recovery.